Hey team, you're about to experience my interview with Tim Lavender. Tim is the Director of Digital for Beacon Building Products. They're one of the largest building product suppliers in the entire United States, based out of Virginia. And Tim and I have a fantastic chat about how brands can develop that B2B e-commerce muscle and deliver cutting-edge experiences for B2B customers nationally and internationally. Enjoy. Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome guest Tim Lavender from Beacon Building Products. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks so much, Jason, for having me. Excited to be here.
Mate, it's awesome to have you along for the ride today. And we were talking off air about B2B Online Florida, which is happening in just a couple of weeks' time. You're going to be speaking there, as will I. And we were just talking about the fact that there's not a lot you can't learn nowadays online with YouTube and podcasts and education programs and training series, et cetera, but you just can't replace that in-person energy, can you?
No, you really can't. Sitting down with people and hearing their struggles, hearing what they're going through, and being able to bounce the things that you're struggling with off others. It's an amazing opportunity. I'm excited to be heading down there here in a few weeks.
Yeah, I can't wait. This will be my first conference in North America in a heck of a long time because I was based in New Zealand for so many years. And now that I'm based up here in Mexico, it's much, much easier for me to flick across the border and go to conferences in the United States again. And I just can't wait. And because I'm so heavily involved in the B2B space, there's even fewer B2B conferences than there are B2C or D2C digital conferences. And so you got to take your chances when you can get them in the B2B space, don't you?
Yeah, you really do. I've circled both. I've been to the retail, the D2C conferences, the shop talks, and those are great. I enjoy those as well. But you're right. From a B2B perspective, you've got B2B Online in Chicago and Miami, and Master B2B has been doing some good work recently on some other conferences that they've been pulling together. So I really love to support their opportunities as well. So yeah, you've got to grab them where you can.
Definitely in DC 360, obviously, with their conferences. There's a couple of other B2B conferences, but man, it's a pretty small calendar versus the D2C, B2C stuff. So can't wait to meet you in person. And you've been working in the B2B space for a long time, specifically in the building materials space. What was it that originally attracted you to working in B2B in particular? You worked as director of e-commerce for Renfro. You were e-commerce manager before your current stint. You were e-commerce manager at Beacon Roofing Supply back in starting in 2016. E-commerce director, JES Restaurant Equipment. So in the commercial and construction space from a B2B perspective, that's been your life for a long time. So what drew you to B2B e-commerce in particular?
It wasn't a plan. I've talked to a lot of people in e-com and how they ended up in e-com. And if you've been in e-com for 10 plus years, as I have, I don't think you plan to be in e-commerce. It's not like I went to an undergrad back in when I started undergrad in 2000. Not like I said, I'm going to get a degree in undergraduate studies for e-commerce because that was really popular back in 2000. But just it fell into my lap. And it's actually interesting because my first position in e-commerce was the company called JG Edelin, which is out of Virginia. And that sells cabinet hardware and sells cabinet material and still in the building material space. We were selling to cabinet manufacturers. We were selling to, it might have been big buildings in Las Vegas as they were redoing all their cabinet hardware. One of our big customers was Holiday Inn and the Hampton Inn, and a lot of those as they were redoing their rooms, we would put hardware in them. And so I've been in the space for a while selling into B2B space. And I did take a little stint when I was at Renfro and step into the D2C space. And I realized really quick that I really prefer B2B because one thing that I love about B2B is it's not necessarily as much about shopping as it is about purchasing and cleaning out that purchasing path to get people an easy path to get them what they need and what they want because they generally know what they're looking for. B2B are not as much shoppers as they are buyers. It doesn't matter really what space you're in, whether you're in industrial, whether you're in construction or whatever. We have buyers, not shoppers. And it's a very different flow. And yeah, I really enjoy it.
And it's funny you should say that. And I think that you've hit the nail on the head. I think one of the reasons why, as a consultant even, I'm drawn to the B2B space is because I'm dealing with operators on the B2B merchant side. I'm dealing typically with IT. I'm dealing with sales. I'm dealing with ops. and fulfillment teams and things like that. I'm not generally dealing with marketers. I'm not dealing with people that are so concerned about the pixel perfect front end and this perfect harmonized customer journey and how we get them to the site in the first place and everything else. I'm dealing with operators that are trying to bring efficiency to their businesses, combined with trying to remove friction from the buying journey, not so much the shopping journey. And that is one of the key differentiators in the B2B space that I think, that's where the biggest opportunity lies, is how can we short circuit and reduce steps for the B2B customer to get from the point of they've already considered the purchase. They've already, in most cases, they've already established a relationship with you as a seller because they've had to create a credit account. They've had to create trading terms. They've had to create their custom catalog, their price list, all the rest. So they've gone through usually quite a few steps before they ever even get an account on your e-commerce website where they can make a purchase. And so by the time they actually get to your website, man, they're just about, how can I get this stuff in my cart and checked out as fast as I possibly can, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. One of the things in D2C and in retail that you want to do is increase the time on page, right? You want to see how long you can keep customers on the page. You keep them there as long as you can, not in B2C. It's about getting them in and getting them out, right? And when we started the B2B e-commerce journey at Beacon, our number one goal was to be able to get people on the site, get them to place an order in under 5 minutes. How do we get them on the site and get them done? We knew a phone call took 10 to 15 minutes. Can we get them on the site and get the journey done in less than 5 minutes? And if we can get that done, then we've saved our customers times from having to call us and place the order that way. So that's the whole goal, is to shorten the amount of time to purchase.
And I guess in your case, because you guys are true omni-channel and you have physical retail stores, it's also about how can we get them, if they really want that in-store experience, how can we allow them to find their local store as fast as possible, get them into store, or at least put them into contact with the store as soon as possible. And how can we, at the same time, how can we demonstrate all of our capabilities around digital and e-commerce so that they realize, hey, we don't have to go to a store. We can actually do all this stuff online. And I'm guessing that you guys also offer click and collect or will call in the scenario where they want to go and pick up stuff in a store, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we absolutely do. And the truth of the matter is COVID obviously helped anybody who was doing will call pickups, right? Being able to move that forward faster. And Beacon was ahead of the game walking into that. I actually wasn't at Beacon during that time. I was actually in a little bit of a break from Beacon for a few years. But during that time, we had set up Beacon with good technology and good functionality to be able to drive those customers to be able to get them, to be able to place order online and to be able to get to the store and do a will call pickup on it. Made it a lot easier. And the construction really never shut down during COVID. It was considered essential. So as they continued to do their business, get them in and get them out as quick as possible. And I would say one thing just to add to your comment, you were talking about the idea of them trying to find our stores. That's one thing that our customers have never had an issue doing, is finding the stores. In the world of construction, they are generally accustomed to walking into the store and they're accustomed to making those phone calls and getting it done. What has been the harder challenge for us is getting them to find our website. Getting them to want to get into that scenario has been the harder piece, because let's face it, contractors are generally not known to be some of the most technological people on the planet. And it's changing. We're seeing a shift as younger people are getting into the construction world. And as we see, construction is also very family driven, right? So as you have a dad or a grandpa who's aging out and his kids or grandkids are coming in, we're seeing that younger generation come in and want the digital first experience, and it being very critical and us being well positioned for that. But getting them into the branches and get them to that point hasn't been the problem. They know where that is. And even on the website, we make it a pretty easy path for them to get to that. But they generally know how to get that done pretty well, because we still do have a great sales team. And as a B2B company, I think a critical piece of any B2B company is that sales force that's out and about with their cell phones, going to the job sites and going visiting that. And our sales team is awesome. We have a great outside sales team, a great inside sales team that really are the backbone of what we do. We just want to make the path easier for everybody.
And did you encounter any challenges internally with when you were looking at enhancing the online experience and adding B2B commerce functionality? Did you face any challenges with getting the field sales teams on board with this idea of trying to transition, at least from a replenishment ordering perspective, transitioning these customers to trying to service them in a more digitalized way? Was there resistance there? Or I'm guessing that you have named accounts for your salespeople. And so therefore, regardless of what channel they buy through, the salesperson is going to get credit for that sale, so to speak. But was there resistance, and did they feel like, oh, we're taking away one of the key differentiators of us as salespeople, which is having the relationship with the buyer and actually building the relationship with the buyer? Or were they like, cool, this is going to take all the admin off my plate and I can actually focus more on the relationship side?
I would say, obviously, each sales rep's different. And some of the sales reps that we had really adopted really fast and really jumped on. And then we had some, you have the bell curve, right? We had some that were laggers and really didn't want to push it. But in general, our sales team has really embraced digital and done a great job doing it. We have seen it as a top-down leadership push from everyone across our executive leadership team that it was really critical that we needed to go digital. And it's really interesting because I would say that the area that everybody thought was going to be the largest lagging area in the country, they really thought that the Southeast was going to lag the most from an adoption perspective, but it hasn't. It's actually one of our drivers now and one of the fastest in adopting. So there are obviously some of those sales reps that miss some of that pieces and they don't want to let go of that. And that's fine. We're not trying to take away anything from our sales reps. So we don't want to hurt their relationship with their customers. We want to give them more time to be able to talk to their customers about their personal relationships and be able to follow up with their needs more. And I would say the vast majority of our sales reps have understood that they find a lot of efficiencies for not having to do the admin pieces themselves, right? And that if the customers can do that, it helps. And the other thing that it does is it puts the accountability of that order entry onto the customer too. So if the customer messes up on something, we can actually see that the customer is the one who accidentally put the wrong color, not us. And that is helpful too, right? To be able to say, hey, I'm sorry. I know you said you wanted charcoal. You said you wanted charcoal in the order and we shipped you charcoal, but you wanted brown and we just said what you said. So it puts a little bit of accountability on the customer to validate those kind of details as well.
And did you guys do anything in terms of like additional incentivization, both either for the consumer and for the customer that's buying off you, the B2B customer that's buying off you, or with the sales reps to say, hey, we're going to give you, for every order you place online, we're going to give you an extra 1% off to the end customer, or we're going to give you an extra point in commission or half a point in commission if you encourage a customer to buy through digital channels? Did you have to do anything special or out of the ordinary to encourage adoption internally and externally, or was it just a stepped process? Hey, here's the functionality, it's available to you, we can help train you on how to use these digital capabilities if you want us to, but it's you don't have to. Just providing optionality is a key to start off with. But at any point, did you increase adoption through incentivization?
Yeah, we started doing incentives pretty early because we really needed to get customers on to get us an understanding of what features they liked and what they didn't like. We really wanted to get that customer feedback real quick. So we did incentives from the very beginning, not as much incentives from our sales team's perspective, a little bit of that, but it was more of customer incentives, right? Get online, place your first 3 orders with this and receive X, giving them a free gift, giving them a gift card, giving them some type of additional something back for getting us the feedback. And that was very critical in our first initial rollouts as we began to get customers on it. Got more customers touching it, got us more analytical data so that we could actually see what customers are doing on the site, what they liked, what they didn't like. And then we could also talk to those customers and get live feedback. So yes, we did use incentives and we still to this day use incentives, and we partner with our manufacturers to do those incentives. They're part of our relationships with our manufacturers. If we're going to do an incentive with one of our large manufacturers and maybe give an additional rebate for the customer if they do it digitally, because it's a benefit for everybody. So we still do those incentives. We have them actually every quarter or so. We're actually doing different incentives to get customers on and test it out for the first time and just to drive customers to get on there and use the tool. But I'll also say we've also gone a little different in some of our incentive packages and some of our ways of getting customers to use digital, because it's not all about the website. We also want to partner with best-in-class tools across the industry and get good integrations. So there are some very well-known technologies out there in the building material space and in roofing material, some very well-known ERP technologies or CRM technologies out there. And we really wanted to make it so that all a customer had to do, if they were using that technology to manage their business, we wanted to make it as easy as hit a button in that technology and submit the orders to us. And at this point, that is a large majority of our, I would say it's the majority. It's a large amount of our orders are now coming in through those partner technologies. as easy as clicking a button in that technology and sending the order directly into us. That way the customer doesn't have to do double order entry. That was probably the number one piece of feedback we heard when we started rolling this technology out is, oh, I'm already using company A to manage my business. And all I do now is generate a PDF and email it over to you. It's just going to be a big pain in my butt to have to go over and enter that information again on your e-commerce platform. So I'm just going to keep emailing you. And we said, great, keep doing it. We don't want to change. If it's not broken, we don't need to fix it. But then what we wanted to do is choose the best in class technology partners that we could find so that all they had to do is hit a button. And then the order came in pre-mapped already into our system and made the purchase process even easier. And then send back, if they're using that solution, we don't want them to feel the need to have to log into our system. If we can send back delivery information into that system and use our robust API structure to get that back in there, that's what we want to do. We want to make it easy.
And so this, I'm guessing, particularly in a scenario where there might be a quantity surveyor involved and they're speccing out a project and they're saying, hey, you're going to need X amount of roofing, you're going to need X amount of timber, you're going to need X, Y, Z fittings, whatever else. And they're putting that into their own QS system. And so therefore, that system is, in some respects, the system of record for the materials required for a specific project. So anything that can short circuit that process of getting effectively that materials list into your system is going to make it easier for the contractor that's actually doing the work.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of these kind of takeoff tools, is what we call them, that are automatic in many things for roofing and building material. There are some technologies out there that fly airplanes over houses and use technology to scan those houses with LiDAR technologies to understand the size of the roof. There's other technologies out there where you take pictures around a house and you get measurements of all the windows, doors, roof, and all the materials. And there's a lot of technologies out there that are doing that for residential and commercial properties. And we just want our products to be in there to make it easier to say, oh, you need this much for your roof, this much for the edges, and really just make it seamless for those customers to pull those orders together.
And I guess that's really the construction industry's form of EDI, right? Like it's EDI integration for those orders and also messages back from a fulfillment perspective, from an order acceptance perspective, et cetera. And then do you have many scenarios where you need to create a punch out experience where they might have procurement on their side, that their procurement system needs to integrate with your system via punch out catalog capability? Or is it primarily either EDI or self-service e-com?
Yeah, generally it's by APIs is the way we do it. So we actually build out direct APIs and skip past the EDIs so we can have clean back and forth right away. We do a few EDIs too. And we don't have as many punch outs. In fact, right now we don't have anyone using a punch out. Well, we have one customer who uses a punch out catalog to drive it in their system that way, but they're the only ones who are doing it. And we haven't seen that as the need yet because not as many customers are using, I guess you would say, custom tools or platforms that aren't geared for roofing. So they already have some type of catalog in their system that's dedicated to a roofing catalog. So all we need to do is create a mapping solution that does that. But that, I will say, that's probably one of our larger challenges that we have right now is the mapping, because a 1.5 inch nail in our system is a 1.5 inch nail, and we might carry a lot of different 1.5 inch nails at a lot of different locations. And mapping that to the right 1.5 inch nail can be a challenge. That's probably one of our larger challenges that we run into pretty regularly is the mapping process. And to me, this is a perfect scenario where can AI come in and help us? Gen AI has come so far in such a short amount of time. Is there capabilities out there that can drive that? And we're currently talking to multiple companies and really beginning to test out some technologies around Gen AI and understanding of whether or not this is going to help us from a mapping perspective and help streamline our order entry processes, even through partners, or heck, can we even just read a PDF that somebody's sending our direction and convert that into an order in the snap of a finger?
And do you guys view the e-commerce website as an acquisition channel as well? Do you say, look, we're going to acquire customers actually through this channel because, yours is a gated experience. Yes, you can see the catalog, can't see pricing, can't see availability. Once you authenticate, obviously you can see your pricing, all that sort of stuff. So I'm seeing a lot of B2B brands go down this path of customers even being able to create an account on the front end without having to speak to customer service or a sales rep or anything else. And then maybe they only get access to the most expensive prices or the most limited catalog if they create their account on the front end, until that almost goes as a lead to the sales team to then get them in as a trade customer and get them onto their unique price list, et cetera. But I think the more common thing is to have the sales team create and originate that account in the ERP, set up the trading terms, the credit terms, et cetera, And then that's a one-way sync of the customer account from the ERP into ecom before the customer can actually transact on the front end. So what is your thinking around customer acquisition in e-commerce?
Yeah, so let's go back into history a little bit for me, and I'll work my way into that. Beacon has not been very aggressive on that side up to this point because it is so unique. Each customer is so different, and each customer has unique terms and unique jobs and unique relationships with manufacturers. So we really do look at that from a white glove perspective. But if we go back into my B2B life, definitely see that all over the place, whether it was at JES Restaurant Equipment, where we had a full open B2B website to drive customers to come onto it. And then at Coastal Construction Products, that was our number one goal, was to connect to customers who are out there all over the world, literally all over the world. We sold into Central America often. We would sell into the Middle Eastern areas. Waterproofing materials are very unique. Is what we focused on. We focused on waterproofing materials, which are very custom, very unique, and we had a lot of specialty inside of that space. And it allowed us to drive into some international opportunities and some national opportunities all throughout the globe. So from a Coastal Construction Products, that was a big part of our e-commerce efforts. We're really driving and getting those new customers and wrapping them into an account and wrapping them into their special pricing and wrapping them into that. And I think that's something that we know we need to focus on at Beacon. To say that it's something that has not been a priority to this point super aggressively, but it is something that's becoming more aggressive for us to lean into. We know that customers are coming onto our site to find specific material and to understand that material. And we've worked really hard to drive good SEO capabilities. And we have a lot of customers pinging onto our pages to get details on products. And it is definitely a push for us now to begin driving that. We have some technology work to really set up a firm foundation for that still, but it is definitely a direction that is in our sights and we really want to go after.
Makes complete sense. And this is something that I'm seeing more and more B2B brands take as a priority. And they're going, man, if we're going to put all this work into e-commerce capability, why wouldn't we also turn that into a strong acquisition channel? Because we've got this massive catalog of products that create amazing long tail SEO, organic SEO. When people are searching for a specific product that we have, yeah, sure, they're getting to our website. But if we've got a competitor that carries the same product and they can create an account on the front end and transact seamlessly, at least for the first transaction, and maybe only have a business credit card that they can pay with as a payment method until they're on trading terms. But then on their competitor, they actually have to create an account and go through sales channel first. Then maybe there's a little bit more friction there that we'd love to remove, and we can acquire that customer and turn. And that becomes what I consider a super warm lead for the sales team, right? Like that customer's shown intent. They've made a purchase. They've made effectively a guest purchase. Now that becomes just like gold dust to a sales team member that can then go and open up a dialogue with them and say, hey, look, we saw you created this order on our website. Thanks very much for coming and buying with us. We'd love to have a conversation with you about how we can service you better, maybe anything we don't carry that you need. We'll set up credit terms, etc. It really creates an open door opportunity for the sales team to go and have those conversations.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I would add to that, with the concepts of financing online that you have companies like Credit Key that are out there driving buy now, pay later functionality specifically for B2B. And these guys can help drive even the terms, because sometimes the problem with B2B is that the projects can be very expensive, right? You're talking projects that could be tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and floating that on a credit card, one, could be very expensive, but if it has to float for 90 days from a terms perspective. And then the other thing is, do you have a credit card that can really handle a $75,000 float on a B2B project or on a job? So credit cards are good, but there's a lot of companies out there solving that from a technology perspective as well. Yeah.
And balance payments, for one, is helping to solve that not only through BNPL, but also automated ACH. And so effectively, that ACH is a very common payment method in the B2B world. And if you can surface that through an automated e-commerce style checkout, but automate the ACH payment process or even the e-check process, then man, all of a sudden now you've removed, because checkout in the B2B world, if you're not on account, is one of the highest friction places of losing customers. And so if you can bring those B2B specific payment methods and automate them for B2B buyers, man, that is golden.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And those are some of the internal processes that we're trying to figure out right now, right? It's how to break down some of those barriers for just the general online customer, because our average order value is not low. And generally, most of our customers do not have the credit card capability to float those on credit cards. So we've got to find other capabilities around that.
Makes sense. And how do you guys look at, from a tech stack perspective, share as much as you can or you're willing to share? What does your tech stack look like from an ERP perspective, from an e-com perspective? Do you run a PIM? Do you run a CDP? What does your tech stack roughly look like? And what do you think you're going to need to add over, say, the next 1, 2, 3 years to get to where you want to be?
Yeah, so from a tech perspective, we're still pretty traditional right now with a traditional ERP based off of a traditional IBM I series solution. Our e-commerce platform is one of the 4 traditional e-commerce platforms from many moons ago. And a lot of our technologies around it are non-existent or are in infant stages. So we have a lot of digital transformation needs right now. And that's part of what we're embarking into, is to really embark into some digital transformation, evaluating composability. Which direction do we go from that? Do we bite off fully onto the composability train and go that full direction? Do we look for something that's a mixture of that, maybe more of a headless perspective with something that's a little bit more holistic from an e-commerce platform perspective? Or I don't think we have the stomach to try to go full monolith again and get into that scenario again, but we definitely are in trying to figure out asking these questions right now. We're evaluating other solutions to touch into that. You mentioned PIMs, OMSs. What do we do with these solutions to drive better functionality and to really speed up our roadmap? When you're on one of these old monolithic systems, your roadmap really gets stalled out really fast. You're dealing with technology that's just really wasn't developed to be built onto as quickly as the world changes today. And so we really need to speed that up a lot. So we're really working hard to make some really key decisions right now to make our roadmap speed up. Now, did I say that as cleanly as I could without giving away any details of what we're looking at and what our technology was? Did I say that pretty cleanly so you guys are still wondering?
I think you have a future career as a politician. That's what I think.
It's always, as a publicly traded company, it's always some things you can say and some things you can't. And you want to be cautious on what you say. And so from a technology perspective, I think we're in the same boat as a lot of B2B companies, right? A lot of older technologies that power the business, a lot of technologies that were in place for many years, and we have to work around them. Some of them aren't going to go anywhere anytime soon. It's not like you're going to be able to pull your ERP out and make a change on that in a year. That's a daunting, scary thing to embark on. And I've heard the statistics of the failure rates of ERPs. And if I was a CIO, it's not something I'd want to embark into with that high of a risk, right?
Or even a CFO, because oftentimes the CFO is the one that makes the choice on the ERP.
Absolutely. Either one, that would not be something that I would really want to risk on. However, e-commerce implementations and ECPs, these are much higher rates of success and much easier opportunities to really leverage new technologies. And they're expensive to change. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of time involved to make it happen. But it's changed so much over the last 10 years. I remember 10 years ago thinking, man, I wish I was on Hybris. Man, I'm sitting here I was on a custom Cold Fusion platform back in the day. And I was like, man, I just wish I could be on Hybris. And now I'm like, okay, I'm
so thankful I'm not on Hybris.
Exactly. So it's just one of those scenarios where everything has changed so much, and I can't even imagine what's going to change over the next 5 years with the way things are going, composable, the way things are going from a Gen AI perspective. The world's changing fast. I remember 3 or 4 years ago when everybody started saying, hey, we're using machine learning in our product recommendations. And AI was a big term 3 years ago. I remember a few years ago, I went to Shop Talk a few years ago and I was there and it was personalizations and it was AI. And the AI from 3 years ago is nowhere near the same as the AI is today. And that's only in 3 years, right? That was just right before COVID. And now look at where we are today with what we're doing with AI and the new technologies that are coming out. And yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's changing real fast right now.
What I see, and I know that this didn't necessarily impact you guys as directly as it did a lot of other verticals, but what I saw during COVID was an absolute rocket ship put under B2B e-commerce and the solution vendors that provide technology to them because of COVID and the inability. Obviously, you guys were essential, so you could trade almost as usual. But there was bumpiness and lumpiness in demand, but in terms of operations, you guys could continue to operate. But the benefit to you guys of so many other industries that literally could no longer go out and meet with their customers, and they were so reliant on that personal relationship. And now all of a sudden they had to do things digitally. There were tons and tons of B2B brands that went, oh my God, we are nowhere near ready to go if our go-to-market proposition is primarily digital. We're just nowhere near that. Either we don't do e-commerce at all, and that's a huge percentage of B2B brands still in the United States. It's a huge percentage. Over 40% are doing nothing digital whatsoever. And so it's all manual. It's basically like a salesperson entering an order directly into an ERP. And that boggles the mind. But I guess a lot of legacy verticals still operating in the B2B space. And so a lot of legacy operators and a lot of legacy categories. And so therefore, they haven't always seen the benefits of e-commerce. And they've always seen it as maybe a threat to the personal relationship aspects of their business. But now I think they realize, man, COVID's probably not the last pandemic we're going to have. It's not the last disruption we're going to have to our industry. And so therefore, we got to really start thinking about digital routes to market. And we also have to think about the new generation of buyers who, again, like you mentioned, business owners and generation to generation. The same is on the B2B buying side. We now have a new generation of B2B buyers as well, which are expecting and just have a default expectation that they can place their orders. If they've been on a job site all day or they're working and they've done long hours and they get home and they're sitting on their couch with their iPad and they need to make a purchase for their business, they expect to be able to log in and be able to do that digitally. They don't expect to have to be able to ring up their sales rep or send an email with a spreadsheet attached to the email with their PO. They don't expect to be able to do that. They expect to either have it fully automated out of their systems into your systems, or at least be able to do self-service e-commerce. And so it's not just a top-down requirement now, it's a bottom-up requirement where the consumer is actually expecting digital capabilities.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And you're right, the buyers are driving it, the owners are driving it. I think it's really just a shift that we're seeing now in B2B where it went from it's nice to have maybe, or I want to have that functionality, to getting to the point where customers are demanding it. It's just an expectation, and more B2B companies are going to have to bite the bullet. And you're right, when COVID hit, there was a lot of investment that hit in that, which a lot of B2B companies really ramped up. And I remember we were ramping up, obviously, from a B2B perspective and trying to get changes done and trying to find a partner during that time to help you. If we hadn't had the partnerships that we had with our integrators, we would have been hard to find new partners because so many people were ramping up from partnerships. So many people were moving on that. You probably 6 to 8 months to even start a project easy in those days. And it's changed a lot. And it's interesting to me because one thing that I've noticed is that post-COVID, a lot of that investment has slowed down. And they ramped up during COVID, got some MVPs, got some stuff off the ground, but they haven't continued to invest like they should. And that's something that I would just warn any B2B e-commerce leader out there who's listening to this. Like, you can't slow down on the investment. If you slow down on the investment or completely stop the investment, you're going to find yourself in a situation like I'm in right now, where we have a lot of legacy technologies that are going to have to be changed, and it becomes another whole challenge. And so you really need to make sure you're making good decisions and moving forward on that, because you can't just say, okay, we launched it, we're done. That's it. We have to make sure that we're reinvesting and we're checking technologies. I'll give you guys one thing we're looking at right now. We're looking at search partners. We're re-looking at search partners. And the Forrester report just came out. I think it was in the last 30 days for search partnerships. And just looking at that report boggled my mind a little bit with some of the movements that happened on that report. And I don't know I don't know how many of your podcast viewers are watching the Forrester or nerding out on the Forrester Wave reports or the Gartner reports like I do. But when I look at those reports, how they change now, it's amazing. It's amazing who is moving in what directions on those reports. And there are one or two on that report that really shocked me in their movement capabilities of where they've gone over the last year. And if there's that much going on, there's that type of movement going on with other vendors and people moving up and people taking the lead roles and pushing others behind. Companies that used to be the fastest companies in search are now lagging according to the Wave report against other people. So it's interesting to look and know what's going on those. And you just got to pay attention to what's going on so that you can drive those changes.
I think one of the most shocking things to me is how fast some of the major players realized we have no capability for B2B. Let's just take search and merch, like you were talking about. Most search and merch technologies, the most famous ones in the world, had no ability to handle multiple price lists, multiple currencies, no tax rates. They just did not have the ability to service the B2B buying experience. And so they had maybe cutting edge search and merch technology, but if they could never be suitable for a B2B merchant if they didn't support all of these complex B2B buying scenarios around price lists and custom catalogs. So in other words, only seeing certain products that are assigned to me in my custom catalog, only seeing the prices that are assigned to me in my custom catalog, seeing the appropriate tax rate, especially for international sales, seeing it in the correct currency for international sales, all those things traditional search and merch technology never really had to think about before. But if they want a shot at capturing the B2B merchant market, they have to dramatically increase the capabilities of their platforms to support all those unique B2B use cases. And it's interesting to see the ones that have embraced that opportunity wholeheartedly, and they've really tacked on a whole bunch of custom B2B functionality in a short period of time, versus the ones that have lagged are the ones that are resting on their laurels, resting on their historic capability, or maybe adding AI capability as the latest buzzword of the year, but they're overlooking what the data says in terms of the growth modeling that has been done for B2B growth over the next decade. The vast majority of the growth in retail is going to come in B2B. It's not going to come from B2C and D2C. And so I think any tech vendor that is, especially in the e-commerce enablement space, that isn't considering B2B functionality, they are seriously doing themselves a disservice, and they're just making themselves less relevant.
Oh, I agree 100%. No, I 100%. And it's interesting to go and talk to search vendors about who has and who doesn't, who's really invested into it. It's also interesting to talk to e-commerce platform vendors about who's investing deeper into it too. We can get into the platforms. Some of them are really double down on it, and some of them are a little less. You really aren't focusing in on it. It's very interesting to see which ones are really going after it. But you're right. The anticipation of growth in e-commerce from a B2B perspective, it's where the opportunity lies right now. Just from, we know what the adoption rates are on most e-commerce B2B websites. They are probably still single digits from an e-commerce adoption rates on most B2B, if they have a website. The Grainger and guys like that are really driving a much better experience and are really early adopters in e-commerce. So they're well more than double single digits. They're well into the double digits. And guys like that are really driving it. But for the bulk of B2B e-com, there's still a huge amount of opportunity to ramp up and tons of opportunity to drive adoption and drive revenue. So big opportunities there.
I think the other opportunity is... Oh, no, you go.
One other thing just to throw into that whole topic around e-commerce and around B2B functionality really digs in once again to who's going to be a B2B online. You're seeing those guys coming into sponsors to B2B online that are really investing heavily into it. And so if you're wondering who are the ones who are really investing into the B2B space, it's pretty easy to tell. Just go look at the sponsor list on B2B online in Chicago or Miami or some of those events, and you'll know pretty quick who the ones are who feel that they're putting enough investment into it because they're the ones going to the shows and actually talking about it.
And I think there's a recognition now by B2B brands that they have to also become much more vocal in the industry and contribute back to the industry because it puts a halo on them. And if I read one more story about Grainger or MasterCard or Caterpillar, or if I read one more story from these guys, because they have been the early adopters, they have been the early leaders, and historically, B2C and D2C retail brands have always wanted to talk at conferences. They've always wanted to put their brand in the spotlight. They've always been proud to talk about things and share and tell what technology they use and everything else. They've always been mostly an open book because they know that's free earned media for them, and it puts their brand in the spotlight, and it's going to drive more business for them. But B2B brands has historically been a lot more closed shop. They've played their cards a lot more closer to their chest. They oftentimes have not even wanted to attend conferences, let alone speak at conferences, and let alone get on a podcast or get on a TV show or something like that. B2B brands have always been, we don't want them to know how much stock we have. We don't want people to know what we charge. We don't want people to know what we run, because that's our secret sauce. And that's what we use for our personal relationships. And our competitors could find this information out. Actually, there's probably more benefit to come from being an open book and making your brand stand out in the world of digital, and telegraphing to the consumers in your industry, hey, come to us, because we create the best e-commerce experience available in our vertical. And if you want to do business in our vertical and you want to do it in an automated way, you need to come and talk to us. And so by being that kind of poster child for modern e-commerce operations and functionality, I think more B2B brands than ever are starting to get religion when it comes to being active in the community and emulating what has been happening in the B2C, D2C space for, over a decade.
Yeah. No, and it's funny, you say some things there that just really resonate, right? The idea that we're very controlling of our price, we're very controlling of our inventory capabilities. Those are still battles that every B2B company is going to have to face, because I think you mentioned the word secret sauce. There's a little bit of that to the way that B2B likes to think about themselves. How do we do business? And the things that we do that make us unique, those are the things that really want to drive the differentiation. And adopting digital as your true differentiation and your ability to do digital well as your differentiation is new for B2B. And it's daunting. It's not new for B2C, right? You look at companies in the B2C market who've been doing things unique for years. I mean, Trade Coffee, drinktrade.com, a very good call. I don't know if I'm a coffee snob. I love coffee, so I go to Drink Trade. This is such a unique scenario of trying to buy a coffee that you may like, and their idea of subscription is very unique. Their idea of guided selling is very different. And there are a lot of companies out there that are doing very unique things. And I think you're right. B2B is adopting into that. I think the other thing, though, that's different is that when you go to like Shop Talk or The Big Show or something like that, you naturally, if you're Drink Trade and you get up there and speak about what you're doing, you probably have a natural audience that's already your buyers. They could be the people who are buying for you. But when I go speak at B2B online, I'm not talking to contractors that are going to buy roofing material from us, right? I'm not talking to those people. So it's a different atmosphere. And who knows? I guarantee some of our competitors are going to see this podcast and say, ooh, let's see what Beacon's doing. Let's see if he's released anything in there that he's going to say. And so there is that piece that we have to be concerned about from that side that is slightly different than the B2C market, because they are different. There are differences in that. That is a challenge that we have when we go to the shows. And I can understand that. It's been a challenge for us to look at the idea of how transparent we are about our technology. But the truth is, we know good and that our competitors actually have access to our website at this point. We can pretty well tell which ones are our competitors' access. They're getting in and checking it out. They're running the technology to see what's built on. They're using built with to understand what we have. They're pulling all that in. So we're not telling them anything they don't know. They know this stuff already. We just got to get past that and realize that we've got to get out there and help each other. I have things that hopefully I can help others, and hopefully when I get to B2B online, some others can help me too, right? That's one thing. I just plug B2B online just a little bit more. I am going to be speaking there. We're going to be talking about personalization. We're going to talk about what we're doing in personalization, our personalization journey, and we're not very far in our personalization journey, to be frank. We're very infantile on personalization at Beacon, and we are a little bit further along at Coastal, and we're going to talk about some of that and some of the things we're doing. But to be truthful, we have a lot to learn from each other. And there will probably be people at the conference who are studying in my time to speak that probably are further along than we are. But hopefully there are people that we can learn and grow off each other. And we're going to turn it into a conversation to try to figure out a way to make it better for everybody. How do we do personalization? How do we know our customers and really drive them to have the best experience to help them get on the site faster, to get off the site faster, actually, to be able to check out and get done faster? How do we make that easier?
You raise a very good point, and I've said this, I think, on other podcasts, is that in the conferences that I go to, the merchant-to-merchant roundtables or sessions or firesides, those to me are actually the best sessions of the day, and the ones where people are the most open, because you get 5 or 6 merchants sitting around a table together, and there may be, and oftentimes I see that topical tables can work really well. So you might have a logistics table, you might have a procurement table, you might have an e-commerce table, you might have an OMS table where these specific topics are being discussed, or a personalization table, and you might get merchants that gravitate towards those tables based on those topics, whether it be because they've just implemented, say, a successful personalization platform or program, or they're looking at implementing one and want some advice from people that have had success with it and what that looks like for them and what their journey looked like through implementation and the heavy lift portion. And I find that when I'm sitting at those tables and I'm listening to merchants share information with each other, especially in person in that tight knit space, they tend to be much more open, much more, the kimono tends to open a lot more, and people are willing to share what's working and what's not working with each other. So I see conferences through that lens as an incredible benefit for delegates, because if they can have these, it's not so much them having conversations with vendors, it's more having conversations with their peers in the industry and learning from their peers. That feels like one of the biggest wins of in-person conferences.
Absolutely. Practitioner to practitioner conversations, driving that down to help it. Absolutely. And I will say Master B2B, the Master B2B organization does a great job with that too. I don't know if you guys, how deeply familiar you are with Master B2B and Brian Beck and Andy Orr's organization.
Oh yeah.
But just the Master B2B forum. He's great. Brian is awesome, and so is Andy. But even just their forum is a bunch of practitioners coming together and feeding off each other. So at least join the forum and be a part of that, because it's a great place to get feedback. I bounce ideas off that all the time. What are you guys doing in this scenario? What are you finding to be a good vendor? What are you doing in these placements? It's a great place to go and just get some feedback. Even when you're not in the conferences, the forum just really drives that well.
Absolutely. Love it. And what's high? Now, I know you said that there's this bit of technical debt that you're trying to face down and deal with and trying to be selective about which pieces you pick off, because obviously you don't want to boil the ocean in one project, because as you said, the bigger the project, the greater the likelihood of failure. So if we can pick these pieces off strategically and say, look, let's replace these pieces because that's going to drive revenue for the business and support all the other things that we want to do. And maybe we attack the front end first because that's where we make the money. And then that can finance the rest of the change management across the rest of the technical stack and our operational processes. But for you guys, what are like maybe 1, 2, or 3 things from a functional perspective that are a priority to drive for you over the next 12 to 18 months that either your customers are asking for and saying, you don't do this today, but we'd love it if you did. Can you add this piece of functionality to your e-commerce experience? Or that you guys have identified as a key differentiator that you could bring to the experience within the reasonable future that would help you guys to stand out to your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the number one is one we've already talked about, is search, right? So search is such a critical piece. You can sit stagnant for 2 or 3 years and find yourself in an interesting spot with needing to look at search. So search is a big one for us. We've heard a lot of customer feedback around our search capabilities. I would also say that another piece is around the way we manage inventory and the way we show inventory and our availability to, are we gonna tell them how much we have, how much we don't have? Customers are all the time wanting to have better visibility to our inventory, especially since COVID. The construction world and the building material world still is not to a full capacity area yet. I don't know when we'll ever be, if we'll be back to that point. So inventory is a big question that we have all the time. So circling around that and trying to find the right way to handle that for us and for our customers. That's a big one. And then I would just say from just a true back-end scenario, like we've got some older technology behind the back end and in the back end that we've got to work on. And that's obviously technical debt, but that technical debt is slowing us down from being able to deliver in the directions that we need to quickly. So being speed to market is huge. We've got to be better at it. So we've got to be able to drive functionality faster.
Love it. Look, I love the transparency and honesty. Look, you could have basically said, no, we're doing everything great and we're going to tinker around the edges. I love the honesty and I love the rawness there, because I think that you're not alone. I live this and breathe this every single day with lots of B2B brands, and you are most definitely not alone. In fact, the most common scenario, I see 2 very common scenarios when I'm working with B2B brands. Either they don't do e-commerce at all today. Maybe they do EDI, for example, for their biggest customers. But in terms of self-service e-commerce, they either don't do it at all, or they've got an aging experience that, say, is a decade old. It's self-hosted. It's sitting on a server in a server room somewhere where they don't even know where that server room is. And it's got such low adoption in the business that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? They got a really tough and a really challenging B2B e-commerce experience. So they get no adoption by their customers, but then that sends the wrong message back to the leadership of the business. We only got 1% adoption of e-commerce. Why the hell would we invest in it? When in actuality, the reason why you've only got 1% adoption is because the experience is so bad. Whereas if you improved the experience, then obviously you could improve adoption and all of a sudden you could prove ROI. And so I think that some of the baby steps that these brands could take is to start doing a lot more customer research and start to find out what the barriers to adoption are. And I always say, when we go into scoping a new project, you need to start thinking about an adoption plan alongside the scoping of the project. You can't think of an adoption plan after you've already built the bloody thing. You should be thinking about how can you take your customers on the journey right from the initial scoping phase and making sure that we're bringing in all of their needs and desires as best as we can into that scope of work to make sure that we're actually building something that has a high likelihood of success in the market. And so these are the two scenarios I see: either no e-com or such bad e-com that they see no adoption, and so therefore they see no need to invest. And either one of those are a really bad scenario for B2B businesses to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And the truth is that it's going to be complicated, because even as we are rolling out into e-com, the B2B space is just complicated. It's just not easy. And I envy everybody in B2B, because I've now set in it in restaurant equipment. I've set it in hardware. I've set it in building material. I've set it in specialty building materials. There's so many complications inside of e-com for B2B companies, and everyone's unique and everybody has complications. And the other thing is the customers are all unique too. We have so many customer types, so many customers manage their businesses differently. Understanding how to move that resistance and that, it's all complicated. It's an interesting space. I love solving for it, but it's an interesting space.
What I love, based on what you just said, the piece that really excites me the most is there's no such thing as vanilla in B2B ecom. Like in B2C,
No,
D2C, there's a lot of design patterns that are common. You could say, okay, here's a very common B2C, D2C stack. Might be Shopify, Klaviyo, maybe a CDP thrown in for good measure, and maybe you're either using Shopify POS or maybe you're using Vend or some other POS, and here we go. Here's the stack, right? And there's 2 or 3 very common retail stacks that I see over and over again in the B2C, D2C space. But in B2B, I don't. And everybody has such unique requirements that it's super challenging for me, but that also keeps it super interesting. There's no such thing as a vanilla e-com implementation in B2B. It does not exist. I've never seen one. And so I think that's what keeps it exciting for us as practitioners working in the industry. It keeps us on our toes. It keeps our sword sharp, because we're constantly having to think and we're constantly having to come up with novel solutions. Especially because so many of these vendors, they don't understand the complexity of B2B. And so us choosing vendors to either go on the journey with them and help them understand B2B so that they can develop functionality for us, or trying to choose vendors that have a really good understanding of B2B, that search and select process gets a lot more complex in B2B than it does in the B2C, D2C world. But man, does that make it exciting.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely.
Tim, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. One final thing for you. I'm going to turn the microphone over to you unless you ask me one question. Any question you like, can be personal or professional. Tim Lavender, what's your question for me today?
So you just recently, it's going to be personal because it interests me. You just recently moved from New Zealand to Mexico. Why did you make that decision? And what was the reason you left New Zealand to go to Mexico?
Very good question. I'm originally from the States, moved to New Zealand when I was in my early 20s and lived in New Zealand for almost 30 years. And yeah, we did. My wife's a Kiwi. My brother-in-law is actually a Kiwi as well. My grandfather was a Kiwi. So that's the connection to New Zealand. And so we wanted to move out of the States to New Zealand for a better quality of life, a slightly less stressful quality of life. And I love New Zealand. I think it's a beautiful place. It's pretty remote. It's down under in a big way. So getting to any other part of the world is really difficult and really expensive. Plus, most people may not know that we had one of the worst lockdowns of the entire world down in New Zealand during COVID. And part of one of the motivations of leaving was, hey, we're never going to open ourselves up to that kind of rubbish ever again. And we wanted to get to a place that handled things a lot more fairly and openly. And we think Mexico did that. Plus, I've been coming to Mexico when I was younger. I came to Mexico multiple times. Love the food, love the culture, love the weather, love the people. It's a beautiful country and it's a fantastic place to live, and it's a fantastic place to build a great lifestyle. So that was really probably the biggest motivations was lifestyle, weather, and the freedom element of Mexico were all very attractive. And they have one of the most friendly immigration policies in the entire world, especially if you're American or Kiwi. They're very open to immigration. So those were the biggest motivations for us.
Awesome. Congratulations on the recent move. It was great chatting with you today.
Fantastic. And if people want to get a hold of you, Tim, is it best to just get a hold of you via LinkedIn? Is that the best place?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn's the best place to go. Super easy to get on there.
Thank you so much, Tim. Really appreciate your time. You have a fabulous day, and I hope to speak to you again soon. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.